Welcome back to Social 20. This is still lesson 2, outcome number 2. Now we're looking at the age of absolutism, and it is a pretty quick little lesson here. There is a link to a 3-minute video if you want to take a little more detailed look at the age of absolutism. The best way to look at the age of absolutism is to contrast it with our current age, the age of democracy. At the foundation of an age of democracy is the will of the people. It is the will of the people that gives legitimacy to government, because it's the demos, the people who rule. Under the age of absolutism, most often seen as a monarchy, with regards to the age of absolutism, the will comes from God. So it's God's will. You were born into the position through the lottery of birth. God chose you by having you as the child of the monarchs in place. So the age of absolutism, the legitimacy comes from God. And in a very church-centric society, as we saw in the age of feudalism, absolutism was unquestioned, or mostly unquestioned. So the age of absolutism, the authority comes from God. The legitimacy comes from God, and accountability is to God, instead of, as in the age of democracy today, legitimacy, accountability come from the people. An example of the age of absolutism will be the Sun King, King Louis XIV. And there's some interesting things to note here. Why the Sun King? Well, King Louis explains here in the lesson, we can see it. This is why he picked the term Sun King. The symbol that I have adopted and that you see all around you represents the sun, which according to the rules of hierarchy is the noblest of all, and which by the brightness that surrounds you, by the light it lends to the other stars that constitute after a fashion its core by the universal good it does, endlessly promoting life and joy and growth by its perpetual and regular movement. So what you can see in his language here, he sees himself as important as the sun, as a center of his kingdom, as his society. He goes a little further with this quote, "I am the state." La tête c'est moi. And we, in English, we refer to it as the state. It's me, or I am the state. But it really is, I myself am the nation. So this course is a study of nationalism. And when we think of nationalism, we often think of it in more of a modern sense. And King Louis XIV gives us a nice thing to contrast that with. Is before the rise of modern nationalism through the French Revolution that we're moving towards, we had this idea that your identity was being a subject to the king. Now there had been times, like we've seen in the past with the Magna Carta, where the power of the king had been challenged, or that we'll see with the American Revolution, where the power of the English monarchy will be challenged. But in France of King Louis's time, of King Louis XIV, he was the state, and the power of King Louis was manifested in his creation of the Versailles Palace that still stands as a testimony to his strength and power and authority today. So that is a quick look at the age of absolutism.